Brian Ross kicked off Job last Sunday. I think his opening question was, how are you suffering? I don't know if anyone's ever asked you that before. How are you suffering? Like, hey, how are you? Hey, good morning. Good to see you. I think he also said something along the lines of, you only have me for a day, and happy charismatic Ryan will be back next Sunday, or smiley charismatic, and we'll see what he does with it. Yeah, I listened back. And yeah, I thought that was clever. And I'm excited to continue us. I think the reality is life continually has a way of breaking our assumptions. Like even this past week, this past month, maybe even today, you had an assumption of what things were going to look like or what was going to happen or how someone was going to behave, how you were going to behave, whatever it is, and your assumption was broken. Things did not go the way that you hoped for and or even planned for. Hard work doesn't always pay off. Prayers oftentimes go unanswered. And when things fall apart, we have a tendency to need to make sense of them. Why did they fall apart? What went wrong? What could have gone better? What can I or others do to set things right? And the book of Job, if you're new to church, if you're new to the Bible, it's spelled Job. And so if you've called it Job, it's because it's Job. The Bible is confusing in so many ways, and this is one of the moments in which an ancient name sounds like the thing we do, which also just can feel like suffering. And so maybe that's the connection. Our jobs are suffering, and so therefore Job suffers. Something like that. But when things go wrong, and maybe you can even apply this to people, you can apply this to systems, you can apply this to organizations, we can start to ask the question of, can I trust them? Can I trust that organization? Can I trust that person? And I don't think it's any different. Can I trust God? Can God be trusted? As you look out to the world, as things are broken, as suffering continues, as there's agony and pain, as there's oppression, over and over again, why would a good God let bad things happen? Can I actually trust him? Because it seems like he's asleep at the wheel. It seems like he's not doing the thing that he should be doing on behalf of me and so many good people. Where is he? Can I trust him? As Brian kicked off last week, we got introduced to Job, a little bit of what started to happen to his life and how that relates to us and imagining our life through that. The quick catch-up is that Job, thousands of years ago, Job is a good man. The storyteller is very clear with that. He is a good, righteous man who has not done wrong. He is a man of integrity. He's also a man of wealth. He has property, he has cattle, he has crops, he has means, he has a beautiful family, about the perfect amount of kids that you would want, a great boy-to-girl ratio, all the things that are looking upward and to the right for his life. He is an integrous, good man who has much to live for. He's even the greatest man considered in the entire area of that world. And through all of this, everything starts to fall apart. And it just goes in sequence. Someone comes to the door and says, hey, all of your livestock has been stolen. Before they can even finish their sentence, the next messenger comes. The rest of what you have has been decimated by fire. Before that person can finish, another comes and says, your boys and your girls, all of them have been killed in an accident. And then as that's wrapping up, he gets boils from the tips of his toes to the top of his head. The pain, the agony, both emotionally, spiritually, and now physically that he is experiencing back to back to back to back would be more than any single person can bear. And then we find him sitting in ashes as a way of mourning and crying out. And he has a broken piece of pottery that he is scraping his skin with to try and bring relief to the pain in which he's experiencing. And then, she's on her own journey in this, I could imagine, his wife says to him, essentially, why don't you just give up on the Lord? You're still trying to keep your integrity? Like, mail it in. He has left you behind. You cannot trust him. And so I'm going to ask you to stand real quick for an ancient reading of Scripture, a practice that churches have done for thousands of years. And we will read this passage. And here we'll pick up for this morning. When Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they sat out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. They sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. The scripture of the Lord. Why don't we take a seat? Several years ago here in our church, we had the privilege of coming alongside a number of Afghan refugees who were entering Fresno. There was already some family here that we had not known. And then as a number came in, they started to connect with their families. Some of you are sitting here this morning that were a part of this. As a church, we helped furnish apartments and get resources, drop off groceries. So we all, in many ways, participated in this. And then there was a handful that came alongside in very specific ways, helping with rides, helping with job applications, sitting with on the floor and using Google Translate to try and have some kind of conversation. I can remember one of mine specifically sitting on the living room and eating nuts and fruits and things spread out on the floor. And I think Steve's here today, but we were having a conversation with one of the fathers, and he was showing us pictures of what they had just left in Afghanistan. And there's mortar holes in the sides of their walls. And there's just concrete spewed across the living room and their bedroom and their mattresses that are on the ground. They're leaving war. That is what they knew. And they come here to find new life and to experience something that they had not yet experienced in life. And I remember asking him, because he was so smiley even through this. And I just asked him, like, how is it that you still smile? And then his simple response was, because of people like you. And that's not a thing to me. That's a thing he's naming because of people, because of this, because of a togetherness, because we can look to other people for things, for comfort, for needs that we have, to feel like we're a part of something, we're not isolated. The story progressed, we continued to build relationships, and then tragedy struck their entire family. One of the brothers, uncles, family members who had been here for years now, he was kind of the one that invited the rest and had stability, helped them connect to a lot of jobs. He the one who knew English, who had a secure job. He was essentially everything to them. And they were all at a family picnic up at Millerton Lake, and he drowned out of nowhere. And at least one person here in this room was at the hospital that night as the family came pouring in to the tragic loss. And then several of us over the next 24 hours got to come and meet with the families at their houses. And not that we had many words to offer, but we couldn't even communicate them with language barrier. And what was really interesting was to see the hystericalness of the family. I mean, there were ambulances pulling up because the women were crying so hard that they were going into convulsions. The paramedics were confused and didn't know what to do. They're not actually having a convulsion. They're just weeping and wailing so hard that everything in their body is being poured out and depleted as a sign of mourning and also a sign of honor culturally. And we went to the funeral within some time after that, and I'd never been to a funeral like this where, again, the weeping, the wailing, the women off to the side, uncontrollable, while the men helped dig and shovel the dirt for their family member. A bunch of it just participated all around. And it was in that I think I realized most I don't know how to embrace suffering like they have. I actually know the ways of trying to suppress it. In my life, my line of work, I get the joys of weddings. I get the hard things like funerals, which I still find a joy to be with people in just some of the hardest moments. There's even some funerals that I've been a part of that are represented in this room. And one of the things in American culture, especially white culture in America, when we get to funerals, we started calling them celebration of life at some point. A little bit of a positive spin on what we're doing. I think that's real. Like, we want to celebrate this person's life. The other side of it is that we can bypass the grief and the loss. And I've noticed a pattern. Many, and this isn't a knock to anyone. The cultural difference here. Maybe someone gets up to speak on behalf of the family member and they start to cry and they say, "Sorry, I didn't want to cry." Like, I mean, I need to reserve everything. I can't actually allow this to come out. And then it starts to leak in other ways. It starts to leak in sayings that we're trying to make sense of something. Like, grandma is now a butterfly. And I would guarantee I've said, all the things I'm going to say in the next handful of minutes, I have participated in. I'm sure you have in ways, or you've received words like this. But one of the things I feel like I'm called to do in a setting like that is to be like, no, grandma is like potentially worshiping in heaven right now. You think grandma wants to be a butterfly, like hanging out on a flower? No, she is all consumed with everything that is good. I don't think there is another thought to her mind about this earth. And what good news is that? That is good news. It's hard for us, and so we're trying to make sense of things. Or we say things like, "God got another angel today." People aren't angels. They don't become angels. God has made us to be us, and knitted us in a way to give us love so that we can love. Like, it is so vastly different. And as I've just sat with that this week through this passage, this dichotomy of how we embrace suffering, for many of us, it's lost to us. We don't know how to embrace suffering, loss, grief. And I would offer that there's good reason why. It's because it's the worst. Like, I don't want to. I would rather all things be good and we're all just happy and things are working out and we never have to feel the amount of pain that comes when everything just breaks in us and around us. But that's not reality, is it? We would get crushed over and over and over again if that's what we held to, a world and a life without suffering. I'm going to get through this part as fast as possible. I'm going to move quick, and I think you'll appreciate it. I titled this message, "When Simple Answers Don't Help." You guys ready for this one? You're going to know these. Here we go. God needed another angel. Did that one. Everything happens for a reason. These are things that when people suffer, we get weird, I don't know what to say. Everything happens for a reason. I just want to dissipate the anxiousness or the pain. I need to feel better about this. God won't give you more than you can handle. Just have more faith and God will heal you. This is part of God's plan. It could be worse. God is trying to get your attention. They're in a better place. God gives the hardest battles to his strongest soldiers. Well, at least now you'll be able to help others going through the same thing. I had to work so hard to get this list down to 10. It only gets worse. At least all of these have a sliver of truth to them. They do. I think those that have suffered well do have something that they can offer back to other people. But that's not the reason for their suffering. God is not some puppet master trying to I think this person needs to learn a lesson, like death. That is not him. But this is baked into our culture. This is baked into how we experience it. This is baked into how the church deals with suffering and pain and loss. And I know there's many people in this room who in your greatest times of suffering, people have said things like this to you. And I say that as a statement of grace, as everyone is trying to figure it out the best that they can and know how. And so sometimes the best thing I know how to say is, man, because I hope everything happens for a reason. So it's really what people are trying to say. But it's not helpful, is it? It doesn't actually solve anything. It doesn't dissipate the pain and the suffering and the loss. So what do we do? What do we do when we don't have answers that help? John Walton, a theologian, he and many others would point out something called the retribution principle. And one of the things we can look to Job for is to try and understand human suffering. What many would argue is the better way that Job serves us, Job serves us, is that we actually understand God through the story of Job. And we can actually use it as a way of understanding how to relate to God when suffering happens. And what it unpacks, do we have one slide before that? Is it the retribution principle? There we go. I'll come to John in a sec. What's on trial here is not Job and his righteousness or his suffering or the friends or anyone else. It's this idea that the righteous will prosper and the wicked will suffer. That the righteous will prosper and the wicked will suffer. That those who do good, everything will go good for them. Those who do bad, everything will go bad for them. This is alive and well. And you're in my life right now. We'll get to that in a second. But you know very quickly it's not true. I'm looking at a bunch of people who do great good, and yet you experience hardship, challenge, loss, grief, suffering. I know a lot of people. I guess I don't know a ton of them. I know some. I can see a lot of people. There are a lot of people who do evil, wicked things that seem to keep gaining. The retribution principle very quickly has no legs to stand on, but it's alive and well. And so we ask why. John Walton says this: whether individuals are assessing their own experiences or observing someone else's tragedies, they deduce that some wrong behavior is at the root of any misfortune. Such opinions are comforting because this understanding gives people a sense of control over their lives. A sense of control over our lives. I don't know what else feels more out of control than when suffering happens and we don't have a resolve to it. Because I want it to end. Because if I can know why it's happening, then I can find the fix or the solution to it, and we can just stop the suffering. It's control. Things are to go a certain way. I have worked so hard so that. And what he's offering to us is that life is not in our control. Even more so, God is not in our control. I know he's to agree with me and think the same way I do and, think the same thing I think about, like politics and people and all the other things. But he doesn't. He is not under our control. And so, a few ways to flush this out. And I just want to offer us this morning that if we dismiss suffering as reality, we miss God as he really is. If we dismiss suffering as reality, meaning, I want to try and live a life without suffering. I am going to avoid all pain. I'm going to avoid all things going wrong. I'm going to try and control everything in a way that I can manage. We will miss God's activity in our life right in front of us. We will miss opportunities for the God of the universe to meet us in places that we have no resolve for. If we dismiss suffering as reality, we will miss God as he really is. And this is what starts to happen with Job. He has a few friends that come alongside. We just read what would be considered their best moment. What did they do? They showed up, they sat with, and they shut up. And then they opened their mouths. And it just does not make sense. It is not helpful. Hence our list of 10 that is so much longer. Then we opened our mouths and just like, I just want to help. I don't know what to say. And then we just say things and leave it for people to clean up, which I think there's so much grace in that, by the way. We are just humans trying to figure out human processes, and suffering is hard and awkward, and we don't always know what to do. So we have 3 characters. I'm going to draw out 4 points, and then the team's going to come up and lead us into some more song. Eliphaz. I'm just going to grab a few scriptures. By the way, this extends from chapter 3 all the way to chapter 27. We're not going to read all of that today. I'm going to grab 3 small nuggets. We'll look at these same passages, grab some chunks next week for a different purpose, and then we'll finally get to a nice cohesive with Jess Jackson on chapter 28 in a few weeks. But Eliphaz says this, "Consider now, who being innocent has ever perished? Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it." Here's how the retribution is showing up, principle is showing up for Eliphaz. In other words, Job, you must have done something wrong. You sinned. You caused harm. You've done something to deserve suffering. This would be intricately linked to the principle of retribution, that the good prosper and the wicked do not. In John 9, there's a few traveling with Jesus, and they ask, they see a blind man, and they ask, which of his parents sinned? Retribution principle. And Jesus says neither. He doesn't necessarily give an answer of why he's blind, but he is saying it's not because of someone's sin that I am suffering right now. Now, there's a piece in this, that there are consequences to actions. There are people who do things that cause great harm and cause great suffering, yes. But when someone is looking at their own suffering and things are happening, we cannot just go to, they must have done something wrong and therefore God is punishing them. They've messed up. We've seen these things horrifically, I think, in 9/11. There was also a shooting at a gay nightclub in Orlando, and many from predominantly the Christian community said that God is punishing the gays. Like, what is that? It's the retribution principle. So people are trying to say that someone has done something bad, and therefore natural disasters start to happen like hurricanes. That is so far outside the character and the heart of God. You can't even put them in a conversation together. But this is the retribution principle. Bildad. Does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? When your children sin against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. But if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. If you just repent, you won't suffer. If you just apologize, the suffering will stop. If you just stop doing wrong, the suffering will stop. You have the ability to control this situation, do better, and things will go better. False. Absolutely false. There is no formula for suffering. There is no formula for earning God's grace. There is no formula for being in life-giving relationship with God. And yes, those two things can happen at the same time. Being in a life-giving relationship with God and suffering. And there is not a formula to try and figure out which is which. And Jesus does clearly say, take up your cross and follow me. Take up that torture device and follow me. His invitation is towards a way of suffering as a way of finding life in him. Zophar, you say to God, my beliefs are flawless and I am pure in your sight. Oh, how I wish that God would speak, that he would open his lips against you and disclose to you the secrets of wisdom, for true wisdom has two sides. Know this, God has even forgotten some of your sin. In other words, people get what they deserve. People get what they deserve. And oh man, if he wanted to count all of them, they would get even more. Good thing he's holding back because he could do so much more to you. False. Retribution principle. God is not sitting there measuring and trying to figure out how to punish people. That is so far outside the character and the heart of God and the narrative of the Scriptures and the life of Jesus that it does not belong on the same table of conversation. Because this one especially overlooks racism, poverty, systems of oppression, power. It completely eliminates the reality that there are certain people suffering because of frameworks designed by other people. People work 2 jobs all day long and never make it further socioeconomically. Single mothers raising 3 kids, working multiple jobs. And because of a complaint of an older white male because she did something wrong, she's now fired. Like, what is that? Retribution principle. This is not God. And yet, there's still suffering in the midst. There's one more. And I could have drawn it from a bunch of them, but the innocent don't suffer. The innocent don't suffer. Tell that to the one that's due in 24 hours to enter this world as a baby and dies. Tell that to the child that sleeps with fear at night as the parents light up meth. Tell that to the family trying to eat dinner in a war-torn area and a bomb drops on the top of the house. The innocent suffer. Jesus was the ultimate innocent one, and he suffered greatly. And I'm going to try and turn us towards some hope because I don't have answers this morning. But I do know where we can look to suffer, to embrace it, and to enter into it with others. Because it's Jesus who suffered as the innocent one. He had nothing against him, and yet took on the world of pain and death and loss. And he is the one that comes to us in John 16:33 and says, "It's I who have conquered the world. Therefore, you can have peace." It's not because I can avoid suffering or I can reason it or make it work or try to figure it all out. It's because there's one who has already set something up beyond this earth, that one day all of the suffering will be wiped out. There is something beyond this moment. And the good news about that is that that same thing is breaking backwards into today, in and through his church, in and through us as the people of God, that we hope with one arm for something that we cannot yet see. And with the other arm, we reach into the pain of the world and drag that hope backwards in. Sometimes we're fractured by the choices we make. Sometimes we're shattered by things we would never have chosen, but our brokenness is also the source of our common humanity. Brian Stevenson, an attorney who has spent much of his life helping free those that are wrongly imprisoned, mainly people of color across our country. And what he's saying is that there is something about suffering that can bind us as people and do a work that we otherwise could not do on our own. Not just trying to find cheap shortcuts to our suffering, but to be people that hope beyond this world so that we can have patience through it and that we can have empathy as other people are going through it. This is the good news of God entering life with us, entering his church, filling his people with his Spirit so that we can press in. And that is good news in a world of suffering where it will not stop and we cannot fully make sense of it, but it breaks God's heart. I'm going to invite the worship team up. This is not his original design. He did not create a world of suffering. He is not punishing people with a world of suffering. It is he who grieves the suffering of this world and is inviting people to join him in bringing beauty and goodness, to undo the curse of death and separation and sickness. to be people that hope beyond this moment, not holding to everything today. I'm going to have us do something in a second, but I want to give us this image of a Jewish practice called sitting Shiva. We technically read it with the three friends when they had their best moment earlier before they jacked everything up. But the idea is that when someone has tragic loss in their life, when suffering hits, there's a group of people that for 7 days will come and just be with. We'll eat together. We'll be present. If the person going through loss and suffering wants to chat, they will chat. If they want to tell stories, they will listen. If they want to sleep and stay silent, they will just remain present. This is what it looks like for God to express himself in a world of suffering. To invite people to be open to his presence in all of the pain, to then be open to the presence of others in all of the pain. I don't know if you remember a single word that anyone has ever told you when you're going through this time of suffering, but what I can guarantee right now is that you remember who was in the room. You remember who was there. You remember the first phone call after it happened. You remember the moments of things being dropped off of your house and signed by people's names. God grieves suffering. God is not the cause of your or anyone else's suffering. He is the one who is inviting people to imagine a new heaven and a new earth, a kingdom in which he has created beyond this one, to embrace it and to share it, and to be patient as we wait for something beyond this.